roll into a new pen of gilts here. These are going to be our 1 litter gilts. So the ones, new litter for the night. Major League Never Before Solo. Their mom would have raised the many-time champion Barrow there in Oklahoma for the Keenholtz and Southwest Unlimited crew. And her gilt litter, and actually, unfortunately, it took us a couple tries to get her back going, but we're back going. And the Solo grandma would have won a pile of shows herself. Would have been the mom of the McCarley Barrow that wins the Open in Ohio, the mom of the reserve at the West Virginia State Fair, 6th overall at OILE, and just on and on. One of the two sow lines here that have put us on the map, and certainly have been excited to get her going again. So a trio of 1-litter gilts. The thin belted gilt's going to be 1.6. The kind of cool colored painted up one's going to be 1.1, and then the more traditional belted, wider belted one's going to be 1.2.
Yeah, we can start with the 1-1 that Abby's got over there, the painted up gilt. And, I think this one, just in terms of a completeness factor, is extremely good there. I mean, if you really can't pick a hole in this gilt, but then you step back and say, okay, well, what can I get excited about? And she's got bone, and she's got jawline and feature, and she's got look and presence and balance and some of those things that, when you talk about feeding a gilt project, you want them to kind of check all the boxes all the way through, but then have something to get excited about. And I think this gilt does that extremely well. And it definitely helps in her color pattern that is very attractive and draws it in. But her balance, her build, her extension all the way through, very, very nice female there. And, I think if you want to jackpot that one, if you want to breed that one, if you want to show that one as a breeding gilt, if you want to flesh her up and show her as a market gilt, I think she fits all those scenarios. I'm curious to hear what Jim says on her, but I think that one, wherever you take her and however you want to show her, she can fit the type and kind. The little gilt, the 1.6, I think that one is maybe just a notch greener in pounds light in comparative to her litter mates. But, man, the presence that gilt brings from the side and how tall-shouldered she is and extended from her blade forward, I think you just can't ignore her. And she walks into the pin just so heads up and good-looking, but then stout in terms of her feature, too. I think both things put together into a really nice package in that little gilt of one that's good-looking but then has the boldness to really compete and to get things done. I read that one maybe as a bigger one or a later one, right? And then we'll see when Garrett and Jim get into talk about timelines. But I think that one fits awfully nice in terms of a profile of feeding a gilt that when she gets there and she gets to that maturity point will be absolutely incredible and a really nice piece, a really nice female. The wider belted gilt or the 1-2, this one. Honestly, I'll be honest. I don't necessarily like the big, chunky, chubby ones, but this one actually kind of trips my trigger quite a bit. I think this gilt's just so bold and so stout everywhere, but then still just good looking and stout mugged and clean fronted, and her hock is so square, and her chest and knee are very, very good. I think this gilt at her base is just as impressive as she is up high. It's we've been beat by ones like this many a times in the show ring at a jackpot show where you've got a freaky one that's out there looking, or you've got a ultra muscled up one that's really powerful, and then this gilt comes in that's just mean looking, mean mugged, and big backed, and has the running gear to match it. I think she beats a lot of them down the road in terms of jackpot shows. So a really nice trio of gilts, and I think depending on what your purpose is or what your goal is, I think there's one in here for you. So looking pretty hard.
Yeah, 3 different types and kinds in here. The little one that's closest to Abby there, the Arabella one there, we're going to talk about that one. That, again, pounds light, but that's the greener one. I really like the skull and bone on this hog. I love the shape of the skull of this one and jaw line, the stoutness that this one has as far as feature goes. Heaviness of structure, really good. Level designed and really good levelness and reach off the hip and hind leg set. I would anticipate that would be a better one on down the road, a bigger one, like Jake said, over a long period of time would kind of blend herself into her maturity where she needs to be. But a really neat hog that got a lot of good to offer to her. The one here, the pig one, the 1-1. Is the striking paint job. She's got a really neat line of a look. I mean, it's going to draw your eye, and she's a good hog to boot. And she's another one that's going to be dual purpose, and she's got enough pliability to center and in softness and flexibility to kind of be a breeding gilt, but still has enough look to be a market hog. And I would anticipate her to be, easy to jackpot and still be very good right on up to be a big one right on down through State Fair and and very, very impressive because of her feet and legs and the way everything balances and ties together. The crinkle-haired gilt there, the 1-2 there, I see her as a breeding gilt. I mean, she could be a market hog, depending upon what county or whatever you'd show at. I see her as being more of a breeding gilt, maybe singly, just because she is the type of skull she's got reads more of a breeding type of a gilt, extremely heavy bone, one of the heaviest bone hogs maybe we looked at tonight. And she's got a big, square, deep, pliable rib cage and a very pliable center. Reach goes good behind. Levelness of hip is really good. And she didn't have quite as neat a look, crested head for a market hog. It's the only reason I say better breeding hog. But I mean, run her whichever way you go. In some counties, she'd kick everybody's tail regardless of which division she's in anyway. But
absolutely.
But she looks like a really good breeding gilt, especially over long term. I think that's an awesome big one that's going to have stoutness of feature you won't even believe.
Yep, no, absolutely. The Belden one Abby has on the stick again was 1-2. Fully agree with the guys there. I think that one fits a breeding setting, and just drop her back off at our house when you're done with her, and we'll figure it out. To be honest with you, the painted up one definitely needed looking good build, and I think that pair of bigger gilts can kind of go. And really 1-1, I think is the one realistically speaking you could feed the hardest on from a feed bucket standpoint. 1-2, which is the bigger belted one. From a show ring standpoint, you're probably going to have to feed her just a fuzz slower to maintain just cuteness up front. And I don't like that term because if they're stout mug coming at you, that's fine. But cuteness up front. And then 1-6, I don't know. She's not the one that jumps out at you. Truthfully, this Sound Lines Barrows have won one often and won a pile in the Southwest. That one looks like all those barrels have. She's stout-skulled. She's shapely. She shows early. She shows often. She goes for a long time. And I think that one you can feed harder than you probably anticipate. Parts and pieces will come together once you get her home. So an interesting trio. Again, that thin belt's 1-6. The painted up one's 1-1. The kind of bigger Hampshire marked one's 1-2.